Good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of June 23, 2016 is called to order. Please refrain from talking among yourselves during the meeting. Please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date. Your chairperson may reorder agenda items at his discretion. The roll call: Mr. Malikian.
Here.
Mr. Mardian.
Here.
Mr. Simonian.
Present.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on June 15, 2016. Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of any oral communications other than I have one note for the board when you're ready.
Right. I do not have any oral communication cards as well.
Mr. Chairman, and for the public, the case PDR 1329554, which is the first one on the agenda, located at 510 and 512 West Doran Street, has been continued to July 14th, which is the next regular board meeting, and this will be without further notice. So again, 510 and 512 West Doran Street will be heard at the next Design Review Board meeting of July 14th without further notice. Thank you. And we have one remaining item on the calendar, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. With that, we'll start off with PDR 151-0009, 411 La Loma Road. Mr. Pagdikian, please take it away.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Design Review Board members. This next case is a proposal to develop a new single-family house on a currently undeveloped lot. The property is located on La Loma Drive at the corner of La Loma and Woodbury Road. On one side, on the south side, there's the 134 freeway. To the east, there's a little commercial development, and to the north and west, there are single-family residences. The subject property is an irregularly shaped lot, approximately 6,000 square feet, and it slopes up from La Loma Road. And the proposed house would be a two-story house of approximately 1,800 square feet with an attached two-car garage. The property is zoned R1, Floor Area Ratio District 1. Staff has reviewed the proposal, and staff thinks it is consistent with our design guidelines and the zoning code. There are a few exceptions that we've noted in the staff report and recommended conditions to remedy those situations. One of them is related to massing, and specifically the amount of cantilever over the garage, the amount of cantilever of the second story over the garage. And we've also noticed that, as proposed, the house exceeds the allowable floor area ratio by approximately 20 square feet. So staff's recommendation is probably to shorten the amount of cantilever to make it more proportional and more appealing, and at the same time to also comply with the required floor area ratio requirement in the zoning code. The other condition relates to the amount of to the paving or the amount of landscaping. In the back of the house, the irregular shaped backyard is It's shown on some plans as landscaped, and some other plans indicate that it's going to be paved. The requirement is for this area to be landscaped. One other consideration with respect to this project, there are presently 2 oak trees on the property. One of them is proposed to be removed and replaced with a new oak tree elsewhere on the property. An arborist report has been submitted. Our urban forestry division has reviewed the project and concurs with the removal of this oak tree because it's not of a good shape, in good shape. I would like to conclude my presentation unless there are questions from the board.
Yeah, a couple of questions.
Yes.
Me as well, Mr. Chair, I have a few questions.
Please, go ahead, Mr. Malikian.
So, there is a couple of things. So we, based on the report that I read on the arborist report, didn't seem like it was in a bad shape. It just gave a B- grade to that, and so it said like maybe 20 to 25% of it will be impacted. But most of these retaining walls go right up to, and you know, I was there and took pictures, and the story pole is right up to the oak tree itself. So are we assuming that it's coming out? Because it doesn't seem like it's going to stay there.
Right. The proposed plan is based on the removal of that oak tree. We based our determination on the assessment that was given to us by the city's forestry division.
So oak tree number 1, as it says it to be removed, that's going to be removed.
Right.
And then the oak tree number 2, we're assuming that it's not going to get impacted. It's going to stay as it is.
Right.
I think that's the proposed new one.
No, there's 2 of them. There's one with the multi-trunked oak tree in the back, which is
And
number 2.
13
Number 13.
Number 13 is
remains.
Then based on the keynotes, it's a new existing tree replaced the removed tree.
Okay, then maybe I've replacement live oak tree, which is the one in the back. So the number 2 is existing oak tree is going to be removed. Is that what it is?
Number 2 is the replacement tree.
right.
Number 13 is the one to remain. It's a double trunk tree.
Number 13, that's the thing I don't understand.
On sheet A1.
Behind the driveway.
Where can I
And
see
sheet
that?
A1.
Yeah, but that's number 13, it's there.
That's existing to remain.
Right, that's
Right.
what I'm saying. So the retaining walls and everything that are going against that, we're assuming that that's not going to get impacted, or it's
Right.
going to get replaced?
Let me put it this way. Our urban forestry division has reviewed these plans. They concur, their assessment is that oak tree number 13 can remain, not
Yeah, it's the
13, yeah. So it's labeled as note number 13. So that tree can remain, and the retaining walls can be designed for the tree to remain. Now, beyond this, the board has full discretion to concur with this assessment or recommend something different.
Okay. The second question is, which is the front yard and which is the rear yard, which is the side yard?
The front yard is on the Woodbury side, and this has been reviewed by the planning division. And the La Loma Road side is the street side setback, or the street side.
Which is the rear yard? There's no rear?
There is
yard?
no rear. The rest are interior yards.
Everything else is interior?
Right.
So Woodbury is considered the front?
Yes.
Surprised.
What part of that is the front, even though that it doesn't meet the minimum front yard width, it's still considered as the front yard?
Right, because there's a curve. The property curves there, but the original subdivision was facing Woodbury, and eventually, with street widening and such things, the property line got curved. But we've assessed this,
Okay.
and we've determined that the front is the Woodbury side.
Okay. So another question, the 4-foot sidewalk dedication that it's right at the front of the driveway or as you enter in.
Right.
Where is that coming from? And if it is a 4-foot sidewalk dedication, doesn't that carry over to the other side, or is it just for the front driveway itself, just that section itself?
That 4-foot dedication for sidewalk purposes, that requirement came from Public Works Engineering.
Okay.
And it's a continuous sidewalk that wraps around the driveway pan.
So the sidewalk gets wider at that section?
The public sidewalk, I believe, is 5 feet now, but a 4-foot sidewalk
Well,
is required to wrap around the driveway.
okay, but there's a light pole which is much narrower on that front end, so it's not. So is that something that it's going to be widened or something, because it's going to impact all the steps and everything else?
Let me look at their conditions, but eventually all these things will be reviewed in detail in plan check.
Okay. And
This is the conceptual plans
And
for
my
now.
last question, those retaining walls that are in the end of the driveway as you turn in,
Right.
as you come in, there's two consecutive retaining walls that is facing the street, but then there is quite a bit of slope from the top retaining wall to the top landing. But they both come to a corner, which is this corner. So these essentially are, as you enter in, you see this. So I'm assuming that they did this so that we don't have a large retaining wall in the front. That's my assumption, right?
Yes.
Okay. But that's where this is. But what happens at this corner?
That question probably should be asked to the posed to the
Because
architect.
I don't even have grading elevations, so but
Right.
this elevation is probably, God knows, it's about 110 here. You're entering in at 104, 102. It's about.
We've had multiple revisions of the plans. What we have is in front of us, and in fact, if you look at the elevation, the left bottom elevation, the colored elevation, let me point it out.
Because it's this that I'm
Right.
worried about.
This is all we had to work with. We don't have cross sections through the driveway in that direction, and for instance, this area is not fully resolved yet. So all these things, if the board leans towards approval, then we can work these out probably in the plan check, at the plan check level. But this is what we've had to work with.
No, I just didn't know what this height the limitation of the height is.
And that information has not been provided on this plan.
I know, yeah.
And we don't have contour lines.
But I'm just asking, as planning, zoning, what is that height allowed? What is that?
This is an R1 zone, and the allowable height is not limited. The only limitation is within the 6-foot setback.
15 feet tall or 16 feet tall or whatever it is?
Yes.
Okay.
This had come up in the initial review of the plans. That's why we recommended breaking up the wall into two pieces. The only zoning code standard that applies in this case is within the interior setback, which would be in this area here. Within the 6-foot setback, height is limited to 5 feet.
And nothing in the street side setback?
The street side setback, there is no limitation on retaining walls in this zone. The only limitation is with respect to fill. No more than 18 inches can be filled. But curbs, a curb of 18 inches is allowed. That's why we have a condition that specifies the height of this curb to not more than 18 inches. The plans indicate otherwise.
Mr. Malikian, we could talk
Yeah,
about multiple
course.
garden walls on that end.
That's
If we
fine.
think it's more suitable, we could continue those multiple walls around the corner.
Mr. Chairman, I continue on his comment. The wall, you're saying that it's only needs to be 18 inches, no more than that. But based when I look at the elevation, although I don't have grading plan drainage elevations, that street is not straight like that. It's, it has a substantial slope. So how does that affect that wall and the height in relationship? Because when I was there, and it starts sloping, even the existing wall that there is on the property line, it steps 8 inches every 10 or so feet. So there's a substantial change of grade. How is that going to be addressed?
To answer your question, this is what we've had to work with, and we've we based our review on these
Okay.
plans that we were given, and we figured the project can be recommended for approval. A lot of the details will be dealt with at the plan check level. However, if the board thinks otherwise, we are open.
Well, I'm just concerned how the grading is going to work, but I'll talk about that later. Since I have you here, I'm having a little, I don't know if there's a discrepancy on the plan, and we can ask the applicant. You know, the stairs shows right underneath the overhang in here. Then when I come to the floor plan, where's that other floor? The stairs shows where the garage ends. The reason I'm questioning it, this area seems different than the site plan, where, you know, there's a discrepancy in the plan. The other question I had, I know you said the setback on, since this is side, it's a 6-foot setback. But I'm looking at here, actually, I'm looking at the site plan, there's 9'1" here. So essentially, I have 5 feet setback.
Well, that will have to be 6 feet. It measures it measures 6 feet on this floor plan.
Not even there, because if you calculate 4'2", and you have 9 something there, I mean, there has to be, you know, that has to be addressed somewhere along the way.
And
I
we'll
also-
sort through that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you've answered, so the dedication, I was going to allude to that, the dedication only occurs in the front of the driveway. It doesn't continue straight across the front side.
Right, this sidewalk
You're just going to break there.
turns around the driveway with
Right,
a
I get that.
4-foot width.
My
The way it's
question-
shown on the plan, it's probably a little narrower at the
Yeah,
flares.
with the flares.
Yeah.
It's really an apron dedication then.
Right. It's not just for the driveway apron, it's the sidewalk has other standards.
You need to have the handicap
Right.
wrap around and come. I know my colleague alluded to the street light. I don't see it on the site plan. How's that going to affect the driveway? 'Cause I think it'll happen somewhere around where the apron is and where the driveway is.
It will have to be relocated or some other measures taken.
But that's a historical street light.
Let me see what the public
You
works.
can Google the site, the street
I
elevation.
have a picture of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
While staff is, I guess, looking into the light issue,
Yes.
street light issue, perhaps we could open up the public hearing, and at that point in time, we could ask the architect and designers any questions.
I'll email the pictures that I've taken.
One other question, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt you. And I also had a discrepancy on the cantilever itself. Plans show different on each floor. And that crawl area, is that more than 6 feet? Where it's called out storage? The crawl area behind the garage,
The crawl areas, the prior plan showed a floor to ceiling height under 6 feet so that they won't count as floor area. The present plans don't indicate that, but we would make sure that they do not count towards floor area, and we rely on that based on the height of the structure and not some cosmetic or non-structural finish.
answer the wall heights, when we get into that. You also in your report mentioned about mechanical equipments are not proposed. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, that's correct.
So this house will not have air conditioning?
We posed that question to the applicant, and the answer was no, it was not going to be proposed. However, we mentioned in the staff report that in case
there's
it happens, the possible location has been identified.
We lost the image.
Oh.
That's all for now, Mr. Chair. I think Mr. Malikian asked those couple of other questions. But we don't have a grading
the
drainage
picture.
plan, correct? Yeah, that's why I'm questioning. We don't have a grading drainage plan incorporated in this?
No.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right, then, with that, we shall open the public hearing. And the first speaker is Christian Poloni. Would you like to be the representative of the applicant and start off? Yes. If you would, come on up and introduce yourself. Welcome.
Hi, how are you? My name is Christian Poloni. I'm the designer for this project. I heard your comments for that retaining wall that you guys were speaking about. We would address those items as the planner has stated that through plan check. I believe that A3 sheet, way in the back, it has like a dimension of the far back retaining wall. It doesn't show the step up as the left elevation shows right there on that sheet A3. But we will address the heights of those retaining walls. And it's the last comment you said about mechanical equipment. Yeah, we will have AC and heating for the house. So we would have to address the location of the mechanical equipment.
Do you know where that's going to be, more or less?
Probably going to be on the back side of the house.
And have a split system.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to bring to our attention as far as the design, layout, orientation, mass, scale?
I think the mass, for such a small lot, it works out. One thing you guys mentioned was the overhang and that cantilever. I think that's kind of a unique feature for this house. I mean, yeah, we do have to reduce it by 20 square feet, which is not much. But that's the owner's intent, to make the square footage of the first floor smaller than the second floor. Other than that, I think we came up with a very good floor plan layout based on the small lot size that we're dealing with, and it's a pretty challenging site to say the least.
It is certainly a challenging site.
It is.
A remnant parcel. Is this something that was acquired recently, or is this something they've had for a long time?
You would have to ask the owner. I basically inherit this project from him. He hired somebody else before, and I basically took it over and got it to this point here for purposes of planning.
Do we have any more questions for the
I do.
designer?
I do have several questions.
Mr. Malecki.
Generally, I don't, nitpick on a lot of these things, but it just seems like you have a very odd shape lot, and
Right.
you've put in a house that it's there, but then all the leftovers, steps and retaining walls and everything are just kind of end result of what you had to do to kind of make this house work. The retaining wall, that corner of that corner, you actually have all the numbers here. You're about an average of about 100.5, and your grading, which you don't have, but the contour in the plan that I'm assuming it's correct, it's 110. You have a freeboard, so you're going to have about a 12-foot wall there, right
Yeah.
at that corner. But then you have a 31-foot backup there, and I'm not sure if that 25-foot radius has been worked out, that you can actually create some sort of a soften up that area. But that's a 12-foot wall that we're going to be looking at as it grows, as it gains up to that level. The second question that I'm not sure I understand, and this is because of the information that is there, based on the steps that you have, and when you land here. Mm-hmm. You're creating some retaining walls and some other conditions here that it hasn't been addressed. I'm not sure. I don't want to sit here and calculate, because this one goes straight up, and then you have another one that you have a middle landing. But each one of these can create some sort of a handrail or a retaining condition. Correct. For the steps, depending on how fast. I don't assume, because this is probably the most steepest part of the property here, and then it's just gradually going up.
Right.
So there's no way you're going to follow the contour, so you end up having some sort of a retaining condition there. So
Yeah,
that hasn't been addressed. And then you have the light pole, which is not shown on the plan, and it seems pretty wide as far as sidewalk is concerned, but it's much narrower than what it is, and I'm almost certain that it's going to be right in front of those steps. So I'm not
Perhaps,
sure
yeah.
what's the plan on that.
Well, we would have to relocate the light pole, because those are the steps to get to the second floor entry.
So you're going to relocate the light pole, but not the steps.
Yeah, I would have to take a look at the site condition again, but yeah. Either that, or we have to rearrange the steps right there and turn it into the planter to come into the. Instead of having an L shape, it'll be a U shape.
See, my concern that I have is the way that the elevation is drawn.
Mhm.
Actual house is like this, because the street goes up like that.
Right.
Not sure what's going on here, and then you got a number of steps there. So that's why I'm not sure if moving the light pole forward or down, all of this is not really what's there, so. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Question to the applicant. Do you have any idea how many cubic yard of grading you're doing?
No, I haven't done that part yet.
Have you talked to civil engineer about grading drainage on this?
Not there yet. No.
Because it will affect the wall heights, because you're going to have a freeboard, a swell in the back, some of these walls to drain the water from the back.
Right.
So those will all affect your wall heights. So I don't know how you're going to deal with that. And since this is more of a neo-Spanish design, why did you choose to have such a steep slope? Because traditionally Spanish homes, 3 to 12, 4 to 12 slopes. You elected to go with a 5-foot slopes, which brings it to a different style, in my opinion.
I think it was a height issue and a planning condition that.
If you drop the slope, then the height gets reduced.
Yeah, it was also owner wanted the ceiling on the bottom floor at a higher level than
Yeah,
traditional.
but you're showing as an attic area in the ceiling.
It's
Your
actually
cross-sections
it's
are
a vaulted ceiling.
Not according to your
It's a
section.
vaulted ceiling on the kitchen side, and it's
The kitchen side.
ceiling on the bedroom side. Yeah, it's a dual roof system. We have,
So you have some high ceilings.
Yeah, we have,
You can still achieve it with a different slope.
sure,
But I'll have that discussion later.
yeah.
Where are you planning to reduce the square footage? As staff stated, square footage exceeds the permitted allowable floor area ratio. Do you have any thought where you would cut it, so we know where we?
I think it would have to be on either the cantilever side that you guys were questioning. That would reduce that bedroom a little bit. It's only 20 square feet that we're talking about.
Okay. My last question is, I know the staff report talks about trash area, but where is that, in your opinion, going to take place? No, that's a Mr. Charchan question.
Trash area, yeah, that's a good. It would have to
Because,
be over.
It's a tight lot, and I drive by this, although I don't drive across, I drive by that street almost every day, 3 times a day. When I saw the story poles, I was, challenging one,
Yeah,
because I thought it was an open space for many, many years. Because it's such a tight street, and now we're saying the front setback is there, and this is the side setback that even further brings the building closer to the street. Have you made any attempt to different style than Spanish? I'm not questioning the style, but different style than this approach?
we'd have to talk it over with the owner.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You will have an opportunity at the end for a rebuttal, because I believe there's 1 or 2 people from the public that will speak, so you'll have an opportunity to come up and address their thoughts. Next speaker is William Jalifi. Oh, you're not going to speak. Okay. Then we have a Mike Bursell. Come on up. Welcome. If you would, introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Mike Bosela. I live on 545 Woodbury Road for the last 49 years. I passed by that lot for 49 years, and if I'm not an engineer, but I have some experience. The elevation of that lot from the from the lowest corner to the height of the house behind it is a minimum 25 feet. So the retaining wall is going to be a minimum 25 feet. Because otherwise, the house above it is going to go down on that lot. Then, if I understood it correctly, the entry of the garage, the garage is by Woodbury Road. The street comes, as you mentioned, Mr. Vic, it goes, the Loma comes in from Chevy Chase, goes this straight, and Woodbury goes to the right. This is a blind spot. If you're going to put a building there, a garage, there will be all kind of accident in that corner because people are coming in. Why? Now, a lot of people, they go to the Wilson School, they cut the corner instead of go to Chevy Chase, they come to La Loma and exit on Woodbury to the school. So the high traffic area. And when you have that building there, it's a blind spot for us. We cannot see it. Right now, we have trouble. Right now, with the traffic we have trouble going that way. Plus, La Loma is one, you park on one side of the street, and Woodbury on one side of the street. So if the construction would be on the north side of La Loma, and the south side is the freeway, and you have the trucks, how can we go home? We cannot get in from Chevy Chase to our homes on Woodbury. And it's just, the traffic is, it's impossible in that street, Woodbury and La Loma. Then, in the corner of Chevy Chase and La Loma, there is a business there. They do park their cars on the street. And on Verdugo and Chevy Chase and La Loma, there's the body shop. So people come and park on both sides of that section of La Loma, right in front of the house. Now, how can they get out? And people come and zoom in the young people in that street. You're going to have a massacre in that area, in that corner.
Any questions for the speaker?
Oh, I just wanted to address one thing. Maybe I thought you will address it, Mr. Chair. Our review is basically about architecture, mass, and scale and compatibility with the neighborhood. Traffic issues are not under our purview. You're saying there is traffic. We really have no authority on that. He is providing two-car garage. Actually, he is, I don't know if you looked at the plan in detail. The garage is not really at the corner. They pulled it back, and they have the driveway. So in this case, they're not directly backing into the street. They're turning into the property.
But how are you going to get to the garage?
Well, he's got a turnaround backup area there, based on what I see.
That is going to go to Woodbury Road and get in?
No,
and that's a narrow.
It's not going to Woodbury Road. If you look at the plan, it's only access from the Loma.
I don't want to create a lot of cross communication. However, I think what Board Member Martin is trying to indicate is the fact that this board really looks at design and mass and scale and bulk, and usually by the time projects get to us, it's already gone through the transportation department. And so they've already looked at it, and if there were any overarching concerns, then the project probably would not have come to our desk. So we don't really have that much jurisdiction to say, oh, by the way, this lot is unbuildable because of what you described. That's not in the power of this board. So we just want you to know that. But we do appreciate you come out. We're taking your points into consideration. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on this case? If so, come on up and you can fill up a card afterwards. Okay. With that, Mr. Poloni, if you would, if you'd like, you have a quick opportunity for a rebuttal to address maybe what the gentleman was referring to, and some other items that you think are necessary.
Yeah, I believe the driveway approach and where the garage is situated, it's on the La Loma side. So there's substantial space, probably about 100 feet before you get to the driveway from that corner off of Woodbury. So it's not immediate from the Woodbury corner to the La Loma. It's further in. And we have our own width within our property to turn around and drive out if we have to. So it's on private property where the garage is, and it's situated further over to the La Loma side. So I don't see, I understand his concern, but I don't see that two cars are going to impede on the current traffic there. But we do have our own set there for turnaround and driving out nose first instead of backing out into the traffic. So I think that was itemized already with transportation. That's it.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Sure.
Any other questions for the applicant? So with that, we'll go ahead and close the public portion. Mr. Malakian, you want to start us off?
Sure. So, as I started before, when I was asking questions from the applicant, it's a pretty odd shape and it's a pretty tough site. And it feels like the project has been kind of forced into this, and kind of a lot of issues haven't been resolved. And I'm not sure at what level can we accept what we have here, because as it gets cleaned up, as I see the issues, and I'll bring up several issues, I don't know what the end result will be. One quick question. Height of the building, is it measured from the lowest point that hits the ground, the grade, to the highest ridge? Is that how it's measured? It is, right? Okay. So I think we have a height issue, in my opinion. And these are all facts that it's there. So I'm not even. So I think when you look at this corner, which is basically this, the entire roof, that is the hip roof, that it's sitting on these columns that are coming down in this concrete arches. It's coming down on a landing or a deck area, which is basically here, covered deck, and the finished floor is 103 here. When you take that corner, which is basically there, and you extend this down, this is 100 grade elevation, and you're about 100 and maybe 100.5. But the way that it's measured, 25 feet, is measured from the finished floor, which is 103. And that 25 feet is set based on that. So I think we have a, height issue there that I think it needs to be adjusted, unless I'm reading it incorrectly. This is more of a zoning thing than anything else.
The maximum height would be 25 plus 3 if the pitch is more than 3 and 12, which gets you a maximum height of 28 feet.
So 25 plus 3? So 28 feet, correct? Okay, so then we may be okay. We may be okay.
It's close, though.
So it is close. So that's something that we need to kind of look into, but we may be close, right? Yeah. Okay, so I think in general, I think we definitely want to address this. I'm not comfortable creating this, narrow, less than 5-foot retaining wall here. And then the back up here is about 31 feet. So I think that if the 25-foot radius arc is placed in, we may be able to put in a secondary planter here and possibly bring this in and kind of wrap this thing around and soften that section up, because it is a pretty big retaining wall there.
Why not just make the retaining wall
Curving.
the first one and then put another one next to it?
Yeah.
In other words, we could even do a double retaining wall
Yeah.
without encroaching into the 31-foot driveway and keep as much of that.
Well, I don't know if you can, because then this setback is going to get less. You know what I mean?
In
so-
other words, then that
So I don't know if
certain
you-
height of the retaining wall.
Just a
within
thought.
that
Let
is-
them figure it out. But I think a double section of this can soften this section.
Not
up.
have cross-communication? All the mumbling kind of makes it hard for us to understand what's happening here. Thank you.
So that's one of the issues that I have, because that's pretty much one of the biggest things that we're going to see there. The second thing that I want to bring up is the inconsistency of the elevation. So I like the simple architecture, simple design, but I think there's a lot of things happening there that I think a little bit of a simplification of the design is going to really help this thing. You know, having these solid wrought iron, and then all wrought iron here with these ornamental railing with wood columns, and then coming down here, there's more of a plaster. So I think a little bit of a consistent effect. So possibly creating this heavier base, maybe a lighter top could help, or even creating the same kind of a look here. That's one. The second thing is that the roof, and I'm not sure, I can't, lightweight tile, I don't know what this thing looks like, if this is like one of those fake plastic looking. Oh, there it is. You know, it's fine, but I think this gable roof versus, the hip roof versus the gable ends, and these little details there that are, all of these things kind of come together, and it's just kind of making this a little bit, whatever it's there, we just kind of put it in there and get it done. You have this overhang I don't have a problem with. I think it's interesting, but I think what it creates an issue for me is where this overhang starts kind of merging in and letting it sit on this retaining condition. So I think either I would probably, for that 20 extra feet, what I would do is I would bring this out so that this whole thing becomes a more of a floating element there, that it's not part of this retaining that's sitting on the ground, or create something different here that this literally sits on its own and it doesn't end in a retaining condition. So I think that you can see this happening here. It just feels like it's like an kind of an odd shape. I would also look at the window placement. I think the window placement, the proportions of the window, how it's coming up to the bottom of the rafter versus the proportions of the windows, I think those are definitely something to look into. That's it for now.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Maleki. Mr. Mardian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had similar comments. He addressed some of them, but my main concern is that I don't see a drainage plan, and I have issues with some of these walls. As Mr. Malikian stated, and I stated earlier that the property in this, at the street elevation, there's a good slope there. And how it's going to look when we have this building there, I can't tell until that's done. But my, major concern is not necessarily the square footage. He's right at the, edge there. But the mass and scale to me is not there yet. Because when I look at this site planning, and it's essentially a rectangle. And the only articulation that I see is the porch in the front. Now, I feel also that the roof slope should be reduced to if it is Spanish, then it should be reduced. And the other concern I really have, which is the main one that I feel, although this calls out as a side setback, further articulation is necessary to break this building, not hovering so much close to the street, especially the second floor. Now, what does that do to the floor area ratio? That's something different. But I think further relief is necessary on the Loma side. Due to the style and the slope, I think it makes it look even massive more. I even thought of your idea. Why gables on the side? Why not hips?
I mean, you can go a little bit further and just completely get rid of that.
Yeah.
Create that front step and the covered area down below, and then maybe create some sort of small little canopy or something over the entry, so to kind of give the representation of the entry. just get rid of that whole thing, and that'll push the building back a little bit further
Further,
then,
right.
because it's like 6 feet right there.
Right
I mean,
there,
people
yeah.
are not going to see.
What portion are
Well,
you talking
what
about?
Look at talking about La Loma.
We're talking about this, you know, this thing, people are not going to understand that this is the side yard of this building. They're going to say, well, this building is built right on the property line, and, you know, then it's
I mean,
pretty massive, actually.
and, you know, my major concern is the walls, the mass and scale. I know you're not putting a, you know, a substantially large house, but you are at the maximum floor area. You know, again, I reiterate what I said. I mean, as I said, essentially is a rectangle with some embellishment, but those embellishments are not making the mass and scale, you know, less or compatible with the lot. And one thing that I want to bring out to staff, I know you call it out as R1, but this has a slope. So wouldn't the hillside guidelines fall in place?
In other words, why isn't it in the
why is it-
R1R?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily in R1. I mean, we clearly have a hillside here. I mean, we're on a slope.
This might be a staff question.
Staff
Mr. Collin.
question, don't we follow the staff guideline, I mean, the hillside guidelines?
Well, the guidelines are very similar, and we've used in our staff report comments regarding retaining walls and some of the slope to address those, but we've applied the non-hillside guidelines in this case because of the zoning.
Of the zoning. You know, I think some relief is necessary to work with the slope, you know. We're not working with the slope as much. We're just putting this box right on, you know, on the side.
The challenge is why create that turnaround area in a hillside that is you carving away? Why can't you just put the garage there?
Direct access.
Direct access.
But
from
I
the
think the
street.
direct access requires a front 18 feet or 15
No.
feet?
It requires an 18-foot drive, actually 20-foot driveway in this zone.
I mean, the backup area, like.
The backup. You can back up into the street.
Right, but
It's a side
the
yard.
code requires a 20-foot driveway and then the opening of the garage. This way, the driveway being turned, but turning into the garage,
An 18-foot driveway.
an 18-foot driveway length is required. I'm sorry, not a 20-foot driveway length is required in this zone.
So in other words, you have to have that at 20 feet,
A 20-foot length,
then you'll have the garage.
then the garage
So
opening.
A direct access won't work from La Loma.
Right, not in this case.
The garage
this
is being pushed back 20 feet, but the house can sit 6 feet away from the property line? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Something wrong with this code.
No, I think Mr. Milligan, he's putting the garage, due to the, you know, the condition of the garage, the opening, he's turning back to that, you know, court, motor court.
Right. No, I understand.
What's throwing it off is the fact that an interpretation was made where the Lomita side is actually a side
Side,
interior
exactly.
setback. So in which case the building is pushed forward, and then, but if we had the driveway there, it would still have to have a standard 20-foot driveway. And that's why the two aren't coinciding, was then the garage would go past the property line.
I mean, it would have been just amazing just to use the garage there. You drive in and then have a roof deck over that so they can come out and just like completely stepping
Will help the
up.
mass and, you know.
Just help the massing, everything.
I mean, I should have asked this question. This project doesn't have variances or anything, it's just code compliant, no exceptions.
Exactly. No variances have been requested.
I'm just throwing this out. I mean, I don't want to go into the variance, but is a variance, you know, to have a direct access without providing that 18 or 20-foot setback something possible?
I
Can't encourage a project to go through a variance.
I'm not encouraging, but is that something, you know, staff has seen
That
before?
Our
maybe?
goal is to have a project that meets code.
Okay. Thank you. You know, my concern again is the mass and scale and how it fits on the lot and from La Loma. Further articulation, further breaking the mass is really necessary in this. And, you know, I don't mean to pick, you know, on drawings per se, but, you know, some of these drawings are not matching to each other when, you know, we're saying, okay, it's final design, but there's the issues of the retaining wall not resolved, and we can't see it. We don't, I mean, I would have approached the drawing a little differently. At least when we have these driveway condition and the retaining wall, I would have shown it in the front, and I would have shown the incline of the street and how these retaining walls would have relate to the house. Maybe I would have made a better judgment at that time. But you know, I don't have sufficient information on the grading and the retaining walls, because these retaining walls will require additional height because of the drainage, the swell. And I don't feel comfortable in approving a project that, you know, I don't see the whole picture. And I think Mr. Malikian had mentioned that also, as far as walls on the side. And
I think the civil drawing is going to really help. I mean, just kind of, this is just my looking at these numbers. Number 3 says new 18-inch block wall. So the existing block wall comes out. So that's what it's showing here. Then on this side, it says, number 4, it says new low block wall along sidewalk, which we don't know what height that is. Then over here on this side, it says new 42-inch block wall. Then over here, based on the steps, if you count them with that, this section is lower than the adjacent grade. Then they're building a 24-inch slue wall, but right next to a power pole. So I'm not sure how that power pole is going to work, the foundation for that, and, you know, lowering this. You got building structures on the side, you got fence wall, and so there's a lot of these site issues there that I think it's going to be resolved with the civil engineer looking at this, and some grading, as Mr. Mardian suggested, the drainage and some retaining walls and other things. It's a tough site. It needs a little bit of a TLC on this thing. So.
it needs a little more massaging, I think, to fit it in more appropriately, because even, correct me if I'm wrong, when you have steps climbing more than 12 feet, you need a landing. On some of these plans, it's a straight shot stairs, you know, but then I see it there, it breaks at the landing, you know, and that's what I'm going to see first when I drive up La Loma. And, you know, I'm going to see these stairs in the front, and if you're saying the code only allows 18 inches in the front, you are right, Mr. Malikian, because the walls there are more than 18 inches high right now. And he's got to step all these 18 inches all the way to make, so he'll have another slope going to that 6 feet.
Yeah, I mean, the building is drawn as a flat ground,
property, yeah.
so it needs to be drawn in an angle, so you kind
On
of
an
see
angle,
what
see
these
that.
walls look like.
And that's what I'm having a problem, you know, moving forward with this project, but I'd like to hear what Mr. Simonian, the chairman, has to say.
All right, well, thank you for all the feedback. This is truly a remnant parcel. I mean, you don't get a lot of parcels like this being developed just because the amount of effort that goes into developing a parcel like this is substantial. You're going to spend just as much money and efforts trying to build a home on this lot, if not more. And it's really compacted. You know, you got the freeway on one side, you got the narrow street, you're next to commercial, you got power poles, you got so all these things are kind of coming together. And so it really takes a lot of will and desire to build a home here. And apparently you have it, and that's what you're doing. And before I even get into my thoughts, I would just like to just caution you and just say that as just some advice, you're going to spend probably more money than you thought you were going to spend on building this home. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a very awkward home. That said, everybody has their dream, and everybody has the right to develop their property. It just, you know, that's the first thing that popped to my mind is, oh my goodness, when you're done with this thing, you're going to obviously want to comp it, and you're going to want to get a permanent loan on it, all those things, and so what a buyer is going to think coming into this home, just being next to all that, it creates an odd situation. Now, the odd situation could be dealt with, designed around, remedied with some decent civil drawings, of course, and drainage drawings, everything else. That coupled with just good design to create more of a quaint building that's kind of nestled into it and then has some usable features that one could use, that someone would enjoy using, living in there. And at this point in time, those items aren't worked out. And so there's a lot of questions as to how the house is going to be placed on the lot. And at the same time, there's all those questions come in as to how the user will enjoy using this house. But again, that's the second part is a subjective one. It's up to you to figure out. But these are just advice to give you. Overall, I really agree with everything that's been discussed thus far. As far as the mass and bulk, et cetera, I think the roof, if it was lowered, certainly would have more of a Spanish feel to it. The cantilever has been discussed is odd in itself. The retaining walls, if we make them double, bring them around and make them garden walls, yes, that's going to soften up the appearance. The reason why I was saying it'd be nice to keep at least a 30 or 31-foot backup space is because of this busy street and because of the school and because of everybody running around. It'd be nice to have a true backup where people aren't backing up onto Lomita or La Loma, I should say, I'm sorry, but they're really turning around on their own property. So what's more important, to have that or to have more of a pleasing garden wall? Would it be nice to achieve both? Yes. But that's a question to achieve, to ask this board. As far as the stairs on the side and everything, it just needs to be by code, and we need to understand it more. If the front of the house is La Loma, and that's an interpretation which I think was a very generous interpretation that you received from planning. Had it not occurred that way, you probably would have had an unbuildable site. Now, what that does is really pushes the house to the front. Then this board really needs to then now make sure that the mass and bulk are in line with the surrounding neighborhood. As such, having relief on that second floor, I think, is a good idea, as has been discussed, and also lowering or working with the roof to really have it be more in line with the hillside design guidelines than just the regular design guidelines, because even though it's not really labeled as a hillside property, it really has the characteristics of one. And so I think everything that's been discussed so far is spot on. I agree with it. But I wanted to kind of illustrate my thoughts as just my humble opinion of the difficulty of making an economically feasible development on this site is I think, very high. So with that, I think perhaps we review the conditions, thoughts so far, and then the board could, discuss a motion of some sort, whatever that might be.
If I may add,
Yes.
and I'll do that. If we're doing, Spanish style, although this style, some people may consider it Spanish, but it's not really a true Spanish style. Even, in a house like this, I'm willing to go with one-piece true barrel tile.
Can you say that again?
The true S tile, or the clay tile.
You're willing to go,
With the one piece versus two piece. I mean,
More economical.
more economical. I mean, I think the house will really look nicer, especially the visibility of it. If you really step the bar a little bit to more of a Spanish, I'm not saying duplicate a historical home, but bring it, more, it makes it more charming, really. There's a lot of nice two-piece tiles, but I'm willing to go with one piece if for economic person.
I had another thought which I had actually forgotten to mention, and it was, when we're looking at this rendering, there's a lot of, imagine you just don't see the stair here. Imagine if the stair is not there, and imagine that this cantilever is more in line with what Mr. Malakian was proposing, and the corbels were done a little differently, and the window placements were thought out a little more. Then this component, which is really that balcony, starts to have more of a traditional Spanish feel to it. The reason why it just feels a bit awkward is it's the real main entries up here, and that's those steps then automatically give it more of a rear granny dwelling, kind of a granny quarters kind of
More
a
of an
feel to it.
apartment
That's right.
feel to it, right?
And so, and that's really being coupled by the fact that, you know, we're trying to create a bedroom downstairs as opposed to an entry living kind of downstairs, where then, you know, the more traditional private items would be upstairs. So in this case, you have the kitchen, living room upstairs and a bedroom downstairs. So a thought would be where, you know, what if you actually had the bedroom upstairs, so you had all the bedrooms upstairs, then in essence, you could even probably add another bathroom here very easily. And then you kind of push your kitchen living down here and kind of have it this way.
Well,
It's a thought.
Yeah, but I think having the open space upstairs, be able to use that, you know.
Off of the living room, there's some.
You don't, I mean, what you're saying, it has valid to it, because I think the stairs having a section on the outside, that can be eliminated, and you can create an entry on the ground level, and then you come in, and then you go up, so that entire mass is eliminated
That's
from
right,
the
that's right.
exterior.
And he could easily achieve that if you look at that,
He almost has an entrance more or
well, it
less.
has an entrance
Right.
opportunity.
I mean, if this really becomes more of an entrance, then he goes up, then we've eliminated really the awkwardness
Of
of
the,
Of
to
that.
give you a little more residential versus a multifamily kind of a.
Now, the other thing is that once you have that steps, you know, if you get rid of the top hat at the top entry, or the landing, stairs and all that, it somehow gives this layering of scale from the street side, and then so you have a mass, and then it goes back and it goes up higher. Whereas if you eliminate that, then all of a sudden you only have landscaping, and all of a sudden, boom, you have a two-story right next to the sidewalk. So that may be another.
Well, that was my earlier comment, Mr. Malikian, is even if the stair is there, that second floor should be pushed back,
Yeah, I mean,
but create a roof or
this
something.
this is not really helping the all the confusion about what it's trying to do. It's not helping the massing of this building. And by getting rid of this, maybe even just kind of creating a solid railing there, solid plaster railing with some nice interesting arch there, and some creating that, and just basically a simple plastered railing that there's no wrought iron, and it gives you this massing of, you know, stepping of that. Cheaper, simpler, you know, just straight to the point.
If he wants openings in there, he could put some of the tile work.
Right. Yeah, you can kind of recess that, nice tile, maybe possibly even put some, you know, fountain or whatever.
But still, I mean, maybe it's a combination of everything we're talking about, because this is about 17 feet wide.
Right.
It's a huge bedroom. So you could absolutely create a very nice, meaningful entryway, you know, with a nice closet area. Go up, and in essence, instead of having the door here, it's the door here, and it's a nicer entryway. And it's probably more of a meaningful entryway than going outside and walking up where you're exposed to the elements. You know, so anyways, I think we've kind of, should we then maybe see what conditions we have, and then we could
Yeah.
maybe give some direction, or it's maybe a combination of everything we ask to look at it again? I don't know. Yes? I guess could staff review the conditions so far, or comments?
In the staff report, there were extensive conditions. I'll read those to begin. Number one, the yard area to the north of the house shall be landscaped with limited concrete landing area as shown on the site and landscape plans. The section on sheet A4 should be revised accordingly. A location for trash should be indicated. And if it's in the garage, it shall not reduce the dimension. Retaining walls at the driveway shall have a stucco finish to match the house. Proposed walls along La Loma Road shall have a stucco finish to match the house and shall be limited in height to 18 inches. Existing chain link fence shall be removed. Block walls elsewhere on the site shall have the same color and finish as the rest of the walls on the site. The exposed faces of the proposed wall along the north property line shall be decorative on both sides. Outdoor mechanical equipment shall be located on or near the concrete landing on the north side of the house. The second floor cantilever over the garage shall be reduced, which we'll talk about that again. The guardrails and handrails, we'll talk about that one again, the twisted. So gutters and downspouts are not shown on the plans. They should be provided on the elevations for staff review. Windows and doors shall be painted the same color as the trim and recess, which was, they were indicated as a dark brown if it's in the Spanish style. Windows shall be recessed and a vertical cross-section provided for review. Floor area of the house shall be reduced to comply with code. Okay, and now we have a lot of comments here. Clarify how the retaining wall, clarify, the retaining walls in general, what the overall height is, looking, at specific areas such as the left corner of the driveway at the top and where the two walls converge. Consider adding a secondary retaining wall to soften that area because of the height that might be as much as 12 feet.
I think it's a condition rather than consider.
I have this as a condition. Provide detail informing height of all retaining walls. Also look at the power pole condition relative to the retaining walls and how that's resolved. Determine if steps need to be reconfigured. However, I think you're talking about looking at the entire front entry and how that gets reconfigured. Historical light fixture, can it, where is it located? Is it to remain or is it to be relocated? The cantilever dimensions are not consistent. Coordinate with the drawings. Also, look at having it as a floating detail and not engaging the retaining wall. Provide a detailed grading and drainage plan.
Not necessarily detailed, enough information so we can make a judgment on it. You're going to need that anyway.
Right.
During,
Provide details of, again, with regard to retaining walls where you have handrails that are, are they turning into retaining walls? So provide information, clarify heights and so forth there. Clarify the overall height of the building for zoning code compliance. Regarding the design, simplification of the overall design, where it's not consistent with Spanish style, with the pitch of the roof at 5 and 12. Consider simplifying, material. If it is Spanish style, the one-piece tile is acceptable. There's confusion, consideration about, again with the style, the combination of the gable and the hip roof. Look at the window placement and the proportions relative to the head height and the distance from the rafters. The mass and scale is not resolved. I assume this is a condition, look at being more consistent with the hillside guidelines, reconsider the configuration of the front porch area and the access. It says actually remove the front porch and stair. Would that be?
I think that, well, we'll hold off on that one because I think that's going to be a discussion point of its own,
Right.
whether we want to remove that stair altogether and have it more of a ground level entrance or not.
The design is not working with the slope. Look at direct access for the garage.
Well, that's mute now because we can't have a direct access from La Loma. I'm happy with the way the garage condition is, actually. It helps.
Seems to be the only way at
The
the
only
moment.
way at this point, without going through an entitlement process.
So is there a consideration to redesign to have a true backup space?
The only way I see that occurring possibly is mirroring the house, where the driveway is here, and then the garage goes all the way to this retaining wall. And then that way, the garage isn't part of the FA, or the allowable buildable area, and it goes all the way in. That's the only way I see that happening, where
Direct access, you mean?
that's the only way.
I don't think he's going to make it, and the reason I'm saying he may not make it, because the slope of the sidewalk curb is much lower there, so he's got to ramp up to get to that garage. He's going to have a slope drive.
And if that doesn't work, there's no way to have a.
No way, you know.
Right. So maybe it's wise to just
Just,
remove
I
that
think,
condition. Right,
yeah.
okay.
Scrap that. And then, was this a consideration or a condition to locate the entry at the ground floor?
I think that's one of the items that we're about to discuss. That along with the, some item you had mentioned 5 or 6 items ago, which was the removal of the steps and reconfiguring the front. Those two
Right,
really go hand in hand.
Well, there's the light post, a historic light post that's in the way of the stairs. You're talking about the reconfiguration of the front entry, removing that roof form.
We have to
So
resolve that somehow, I mean.
all the
that
pieces
changes.
there.
Can you add a couple of small little items that I missed? There's a skylight that is shown right above right in front, facing the front. So I think the skylight, I would like that skylight to be either removed or placed somewhere else if they need to, because there's a window in front of it. So I'm just, it just brings that more of a contemporary effect to the facing the street. I think that's something that needs to be, a little bit more information is given to us to see what that actually is. The way it's drawn, it's the tiny little square.
He has it in the bathroom.
Yeah, over a bathroom, and there's a window there. So I'm just not understanding what that skylight is all about. So
Okay.
that's one. The second thing is the consistency of the windows. There's either a single hung or double hung versus casement versus, some of these windows need to be more consistent.
And the overall
especially the
openings
ones-
too.
Yeah, the openings, the way that they're like narrow, it's
Proportions,
just
right.
not proportioned to the building and the Spanish style that they're trying to create. And then the gable and attic vents that they have, the two ends, they look out of, I've never seen more of either louvered or more of those condensed.
We can have just flutes.
Yeah, but it's just the way the shape is, it's like a very contemporary approach to the design, in my opinion. I think it's
More of a traditional ventilation.
more of a traditional Eve and the Spanish.
One question I want to, add is, make sure all the plans match, because some of these stairs from site plans don't match and the landscape doesn't match. And the other thing, we want to make sure the setbacks, especially on the Loma, at least meet the minimum.
So we're talking about consistency in the plans and the
Plans, right, correct
elevation.
plans, accurate plans.
I don't remember the last time a house had this many conditions. That's a lot of work to do.
I mean, there's a lot happening within a very small little area. And one quick other suggestion, have them run it by Water and Power for the pole that they're removing, and they're regrading the back area, and then they're putting those the little retaining walls along the side, and then around it. I think they need to have a 5-foot clear space around the
So
pole.
probably once the preliminary civil drawings are done, that'd be a good time to then approach Glendale Water and Power to make sure that they're able to meet.
Well, at least they can get some feedback as far as water
They can
and
do
power.
it now, they can get a
They can
feedback,
get
so
them.
And then
direction,
go,
go. So when they start the civil plan, they know where how to deal with it, you know.
Do we have a motion?
Well, they wanted to discuss
Well, we wanna
whether the stairs
discuss
should be in the
those
front or not, whether it is the house.
Is this something that the board is feeling should be returned for redesign, or is this something that, with all these prescriptive conditions?
I just think there's a lot of little conditions that, I don't know.
I'm not really comfortable with having all these conditions and what we're asking for to be done by staff, because as presented here today, the staff is also not clear about the walls. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, so if staff is not clear about the walls and we're giving them direction, we don't know what the end result will be. So
So I agree with you, Mr. Martin. And I think the direction that I would, or the suggestion that I would have for the applicant would be is to take the two approaches. I personally am okay with stepping up and having the entry, or entering at the lower level. Both options I'm fine with. It's just the massing, the way it's going to come out. This building is sitting very close. It's helping them in one way, it's hurting them the other, because this thing is a 25, 30 feet tall structure that is about 5 or 6 feet away from the sidewalk. So as you drive up, this thing is going to look very massive, and we don't have the setback to soften these sections of the building. So I think in some level that the top landing gives that stepping of the building itself. Whereas if we eliminate the stairs, that will be, we're creating this tall element. But at the other hand, we're creating this, we have other opportunities to create some interesting stuff there. When we get
With
rid of the
roofs,
steps,
et cetera.
create windows, grooves, push the building in or out, or do something. Maybe even create a small little balcony facing the front, and so I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ways that we can address that tall section. The one thing that I'm afraid of is that once they eliminate that step and create that entry, vestibule or whatever that they want to do in the first level, that they will just end up with a 2-story straight wall that is coming up, and we don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. So it's an option for them to kind of entertain and look at which one they prefer.
So we're given, basically the condition is to assess both ideas as discussed and try to come up with an alternative that's providing less mass and bulk to the building.
Exactly.
Okay.
I personally, I'm not fond of the way that they treated the top covered entry porch, or whatever you want to call it. The way that they've treated, I'm not sold by that. So the simple solution on my end is just get rid of that and just create a nice little canopy, maybe even a fabric canopy or whatever it is, like a trellis or something there. But it doesn't have to be a roof structure over that area.
Because I think that's adding to the mess. Even.
I think so.
So then,
And the last thing is, the plans, as Mr. Mardian suggested, that it needs to be consistent, but it's very important for these models to be consistent with the contour of the hill, so they can actually understand. We can understand, because I'm just kind of putting these numbers together, I'm trying to visualize this thing, but I don't think they even visualize how this thing is sloping up and how this building is going to be, one end is going to be much taller than the other, and how this thing is going to sit with the contour of the building, and one part of it, the steps with the retaining and all that. So I think it's going to help everyone to understand what's going on.
they have the accurate street elevation in.
Yeah, I mean, you need to do, plot the accurate street profile.
Right.
And set this building. So we know exactly how high is it from the south end, or,
Sure.
as it relates to the street.
Okay. So with that then, Could someone entertain a motion
I'll
then on that
move to
move?
return for redesign with conditions and considerations.
May I suggest something before that, if I may? Probably it would be advisable to recommend that the applicant consult with Water and Power regarding the power pole and what the requirements are, Public Works Engineering regarding the light pole, and the city's arborist regarding the oak tree, so that as the plans are modified, they would have that understanding in mind and modify the plans accordingly.
That's what was discussed by Board Member Malikian and Mardian, was exactly that, was to have those initial meetings.
With those respective
right?
staff.
And then
Okay,
have
not
the
planning.
civil
Okay.
drawings prepared that are more
Okay.
in line with those conversations.
Well, I think definitely planning needs to be part of that.
We
You
can be
know,
part of that,
you-
but at least they are involved. It's
At
not.
least you can walk them through and make sure that they're in contact with the correct people and get the correct answers, rather than for them to kind of take the lead and meet with these people and bring you the information. I think that would be very important
That's fine.
for staff to be involved with that.
So we have a motion by Mr. Malekian. Do we have a second?
Second the motion.
And second by Mr. Board Member Mardian. Roll call. Board Member Malekian.
Yes.
Board Member Mardian.
Yes.
And Chairman Simonian.
Yes.
Motion carries. And what?
I believe we have some minutes
Turn
to actually approve.
Yes, we do, Mr. Chairman, from May 26th.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the May 26th, but I can't make a motion on the remainder. I think,
And unfortunately, or I was absent.
I think we're only making a motion on one of them.
May 26th.
But more specifically on the Gladys Drive one is what we are moving, and also the Salem one. And we are not, because also on that evening, the 2612 Honolulu project was heard, but that's not part of these minutes.
What's the first
Right,
one?
because that was a recommendation.
May 26th. Was Honolulu.
So do we have a quorum on Gladys and also Salem?
No. Gladys, we don't have.
Unless you can pass the gavel to me, and because I'm going to recuse myself, so you can.
Well, I wasn't here for Gladys,
Oh,
and I wasn't here for
It's not going to
Salem.
happen.
So for Gladys, we had Malekian and Mardian abstained. Absent, I'm sorry.
The only thing we can
And so
vote
we
on.
can't do that one anyways.
Right.
As such, we could, as far as Salem, Mr. Board Member Malekian and Board Member Mardian were absent as well. And in that case, we don't have a quorum for that because that'd be the only
Why don't
one.
we just take the minutes to the next meeting then of July 14th?
Do that. Seems like the best
We could do
approach.
Everybody
the
will
May
be here.
26th? Oh, we only have two then, because Mr., okay, that's never mind.
Yeah, both,
Yeah.
that's right. Both cases, yourself and Board Member Malekian were absent.
Okay.
And so,
I was just trying to move Honolulu, but then I realized we're only two here.
and Honolulu's only a recommendation.
Okay.
So with that, we'll do the minutes at another point in time. I guess adjourn? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to
Adjourn.
adjourn.
All right.